Today, we're diving into the story of one man whose search for answers to life's biggest, toughest questions ended up sparking a philosophy, a way of life that has guided millions of people for over 2,000 years. Yep, we're talking about the Buddha.
But first, let's start with a little thought experiment. Just imagine for a second, what if you had literally everything you could ever want? All the luxury, all the comfort, a life completely shielded from anything ugly or painful. And what if, even with all that, it still wasn't enough? Well, for one person, this wasn't just a hypothetical. It was the very problem that kick-started a journey that would change the world.
All right, so let's get into it. Our story kicks off with a prince named Siddhartha Gautama. He was born around the 5th century BCE in a place we now call Nepal. As the heir to the royal Shakya clan, his life was, by all accounts, about as perfect as you can get.
Now, just a quick heads up. While historians are pretty sure Siddhartha was a real person, the stories about his life were written down way after he lived, so they're filled with legends and epic details. The point isn't to read them as a literal history book, but to see the deeper truth they're trying to share about his incredible journey. And that journey, the story goes, began with a major prophecy right at his birth. A wise man told his dad, the king, that his son would grow up to be one of two things, either a world-conquering king or a world-changing spiritual leader. Well, the king wanted a successor, not a saint, so he did everything in his power to stack the deck. He built a world of pure pleasure and luxury for Siddhartha, making sure his son never saw a single hint of sickness, old age, or death.
And to really get a sense of how extreme this was, we can look at some of the early texts. In them, the Buddha himself is quoted as saying he lived a very spoiled life. I mean, he had different palaces for different seasons, the finest clothes, anything he could possibly desire. He was totally insulated from the real world. But you know how these things go, no bubble can last forever. And this brings us to the massive turning point in his life, the moment that perfect gilded cage was completely shattered. This what's known as the Great Renunciation.
So around the age of 29, Siddhartha takes a few trips outside the palace walls. And for the very first time in his life, he sees an old man struggling to walk. Then he sees a person ravaged by disease. And finally, a dead body being carried for cremation. Aging, sickness, death, these fundamental truths of life that his father had hidden from him hit him like a ton of bricks. But then he saw a fourth sight, a wandering ascetic, a spiritual seeker who had given up everything, yet had this look of profound peace on his face. And in that man, Siddhartha saw a glimmer of hope, a possible way out of all this suffering.
For Siddhartha, everything changed in that moment. The palace, which had been his paradise, suddenly felt like a prison. He saw the life of an ascetic, a samana, as total freedom, like being out in the free open air, where he could finally search for a real solution to the suffering that he now knew was a part of everyone's life. So he did it. He left his palace, his title, his wife, even his newborn son, to find the answer.
So he's left this life of total luxury. Where does he even begin his search? Well, he does what a lot of spiritual seekers did back then. He went to the opposite extreme, punishing the body, believing that was the way you could set the spirit free.
And when I say extreme, I mean extreme. He pushed his body to the absolute brink, practicing intense fasting, holding his breath, sleeping on thorns, the whole 9 yards. He got so thin his bones were literally sticking out. But here's the crucial part. After years of all that pain and self-denial, he realized he wasn't any closer to the truth.
And this led to a massive breakthrough. He'd lived at both ends of the spectrum, right? The total indulgence in the palace didn't bring any real, lasting happiness, but torturing his body didn't lead to any real wisdom either. He realized neither extreme worked. The real answer had to be somewhere in the middle, a middle way.
So, having rejected both of those paths, Siddhartha sat down under a large tree, which we now call the Bodhi tree. He vowed he would not get up until he found the answer he was looking for. And it was there, in a state of deep meditation, that he finally achieved enlightenment. He became the Buddha, which literally just means the awakened one.
So what did he awaken to? First, he saw the fundamental problem of existence, something called samsara. Think of it like a hamster wheel. It's this endless, repetitive cycle of being born, dying, and being reborn, over and over again. And what keeps us stuck on this wheel is our own ignorance and our constant nagging craving for things to be different than they are.
And the solution he came up with is just incredibly clear and logical, almost like a doctor's diagnosis for the human condition. These are the Four Noble Truths. Just check out the logic here. 1, he identifies the symptom. Life involves suffering or a deep sense of dissatisfaction. 2, he diagnoses the cause. This suffering comes from our craving and attachment. 3, he gives the prognosis. There is a cure. It's actually possible to end this suffering. And 4, he writes the prescription. The way to do it is to follow a specific path.
And that prescription is this, the Noble Eightfold Path. This is the how-to guide. It's the practical, nitty-gritty set of instructions for training your mind and living an ethical life so you can finally step off that wheel of samsara. It's the very essence of that middle way he discovered.
Now, after this profound awakening, the Buddha could have just kept it all to himself. But he made a really important choice. He decided to spend the rest of his life teaching what he had discovered, what he called the Dharma, so that everyone could benefit from it.
And for the next 4.5 decades, that's exactly what he did. He walked all over northern India, and his message was pretty revolutionary because he taught it to everyone. He talked with kings, servants, merchants, outcasts. It didn't matter. He created a community of followers, the Sangha, that was open to anyone, regardless of their background.
He lived a long, full life, and at the age of 80, his teaching journey came to an end. His death is known as parinirvana, which means the final, complete release from that cycle of rebirth.
And his reported final words to his followers really pack a punch. They're a perfect summary of his whole teaching. He said, "All sankharas decay. Sankharas just means all the things that are put together, all conditioned things. So basically everything." He's saying, look, everything changes, everything falls apart, nothing lasts forever. So don't waste your time. Strive for the goal with diligence.
And that really leaves us with this one big final question to think about. This whole thing started as one man's deeply personal quest to find an answer to the universal problem of human suffering. So how is it that his solution, found 2,500 years ago, still resonates so deeply and continues to guide hundreds of millions of people all across the planet today?